Hey guys, tonight we're slipping softly into the haze of a distant morning, one that smells faintly of cardamom, smoke, and dew-warmed stone. We're in ancient Ethiopia, just outside the city of Aksum in the 9th century. It's early, the kind of early where even the roosters are just testing their voices and the sky's still working on its colors. You've barely had time to blink the sleep from your eyes, but already you can hear the faint rattle of wagon wheels, the mumble of traders, and the steady creak of something very old waking up. This isn't the kind of place you reach by accident. You've either wandered here through a dusty trail of dreams or slipped quietly through history's back door while no one was looking. Either way, welcome. You probably won't survive this marketplace by modern standards. There's no Wi-Fi, no iced lattes, and definitely no refunds, but I promise, there's magic in the mundane. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is. I love reading your sleepy little check-ins from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your feet land gently on the hard-packed earth, cool and a little damp with night's last breath. Before you stretches the eastern gate of Aksum's great marketplace, timbered, wide, and well-worn from 1,000 mornings just like this. It's not grand, not gilded. Just sturdy and slightly leaning, like it prefers the company of the ground over grandeur. The gate is flanked by a stone wall crawling with lazy ivy, and perched right atop it is a lopsided stork, blinking slowly like it owns the place. It probably does. You shuffle closer as the sun begins to rise behind you, casting a honeyed glow across everything. The stones beneath your feet glitter faintly with flecks of quartz. A cart creaks up to the gate. A pair of oxen plodding along with the resigned pace of creatures that have done this far too many times before. One of them lets out a low, gravelly moo. It's less of a greeting, more of a protest. Near the gate, a young girl with one sandal and a bundle of bread on her head watches you curiously. She doesn't say a word, just bites into her breakfast and disappears through the gate with the softest crunch of flatbread. And there it is, your cue to enter. The gate opens with a groan like someone stretching after a nap. One of the hinges lets out a dramatic squeal, more performance than function. Beside it, the gatekeeper tugs on a rope to pull the wooden beam clear. He's not what you expected. He's barefoot, wrapped in a dusty cloak, and chewing thoughtfully on a twig of something that smells like mint and pepper. Next to him, his donkey is fully asleep, slouched against the wall with its lips twitching like it's dreaming of greener pastures or possibly retired life. You step into the market just as the first real rays of light spill over the rooftops. The world stretches out ahead of you, rows of stalls, canopies in every sun-washed color, baskets piled high with goods, people moving like slow streams between it all. It's not chaotic. Not yet. This is the lull before the hum. There's a smell in the air you can't quite place. Part smoky firewood, part warm spices, and something sharp and green, like crushed leaves. It smells like possibility. A boy runs past carrying 3 clay pots tied together with rope, and somehow none of them break. You half expect to hear a crash, but no, just the slap of his feet on the ground and the fading sound of his mother yelling after him. A cart piled with woven baskets rumbles by, its wheels held together with what you suspect might be divine intervention. One basket falls, rolls to a stop at your feet. You pick it up and place it back without a word. The driver nods in gratitude and tosses you a figure. It's the softest thing you've ever held. Tastes like syrup-soaked sunlight. On your left, a woman arranges garlands of flowers, blue lotus and marigold, onto a reed mat. Her hands move like music, and for a moment, you just stand there watching, like she's painting with petals. Behind her, a small shrine built into the wall features an offering of what looks like butter, a tiny carved elephant, and some coins. The butter is slightly melted. It's unclear if that's intentional or just hot weather. Either way, someone's god is now enjoying room-temperature dairy. A dog trots by with a papyrus scroll in its mouth. No one stops it. You suspect it might have a regular route. And overhead, birds wheel in lazy loops, calling softly to each other like they're checking in. You see the lentil guy yet? Nah, still setting up. As you walk deeper into the market, the sounds shift. Footsteps over gravel, the low murmur of voices in Guizi and Amharic, the clink of bronze coins being weighed in a small scale shaped like a lion. You pause at a stall displaying a pile of oddly shaped nuts, One is carved with a face. The vendor grins. "Luck nut," he says. "Eat it, dream of gold. Or terrible rain. Depends." Historians still argue whether these open-air markets were the economic heart of Aksum or just the social engine, the place where news spread, alliances formed, and neighbors kept tabs on each other. Probably both. But today, it's just a place to walk, to watch, to wonder. Your feet are dusty already, but you don't care. This market wakes up slowly, like an old friend stretching beneath the sun, and you're right here with it, every sleepy step of the way. You drift past the flower stall and into a shaded corridor where the morning air hangs thicker, heavy with the scent of roasting grains and damp woven matting. The sun's still rising behind the high buildings of carved basalt, but here, in the belly of the marketplace, it's a gentle twilight, lit by flickering oil lamps and shafts of light that filter down through canvas canopies stitched together from scraps of dyed fabric. The whole thing looks like a giant patchwork sail, and it sways faintly in the breeze, breathing, almost. You follow your nose to a low stall with smoke curling from a small clay oven, and that's where you spot your first real prize. Flat, golden bread called injera, fresh off the pan and folded like letters waiting to be read. The cook is a woman with strong arms, wide eyes, and a baby tied to her back with a cloth that's seen better centuries. She doesn't speak as she flips the bread with a flat stick, but when she hands you a piece, hot, pillowy, sour, you nod, and she smiles just once, like a shared secret has passed between you. Injera, historians say, is older than most empires and probably smarter than some kings. It's made from teff, a grain so small it makes quinoa look bloated, and yet it's been feeding East Africans for millennia. Still, no one agrees exactly how old injera really is. Some scholars date it to the 6th century, others argue for earlier, but the consensus is, it's delicious and it sticks to your fingers in the most satisfying way. Next to the bread stall is a row of tiny vendors selling, well, you're not entirely sure what. A squat man with a crooked grin is mashing something in a stone bowl, leaves, salt, and what looks like crushed ants. Stomach cure, he explains with a shrug. Or possibly curse. Depends on how you use it. You inch away politely. To your right, a pair of old women sit cross-legged beside a pyramid of honey jars. The jars are sealed with wax and cloth, each one stamped with a sigil that looks vaguely like a goat doing yoga. One woman offers you a taste on a stick. The honey is thick, slightly fermented, and tingles your tongue. You nod in appreciation. They nod back. Then, without warning, a string of bells rings out in a jaunty rhythm. Ding, ding ding, ding, and a man on stilts strides through the market. He's painted blue from neck to toes, his beard braided with feathers. Children run after him laughing, tossing small coins at his feet. He yells something about dates and dates. Whether he means fruit or romantic appointments is unclear, but he vanishes into the crowd before you can ask. There's a scholarly debate surrounding performers like this, whether they were pure entertainment, spiritual messengers, or a kind of advertisement. Some believe they were tied to older, pre-Christian traditions of sky worship or trance healing. Others argue they were just the local equivalent of a guy with a sandwich board shouting, "Sale." You duck into a side alley where the scent of something sweet pulls at your curiosity. There, beneath an awning stitched with beads, is a table piled with small, glazed pastries. They're unfamiliar, shaped like tiny birds, filled with something dark and sticky. You point. The vendor chuckles and hands you one. You bite in. It's spiced honey and lentils, of all things. And it works. Somehow, improbably, it works. He winks. Royal recipe. But which royal, no one remembers. Behind him hangs a faded tapestry of a crowned woman riding a lion. You suspect she wouldn't have survived a modern nutritionist, but her taste was impeccable. As you wander deeper, the crowd thickens. Traders from the Red Sea coast wrapped in striped shawls, merchants from across the Nile speaking rapid-fire Arabic, and a few pale-skinned travelers speaking Greek and clutching scrolls like nervous tourists. One of them bumps into you and mumbles, "Sing no me," before disappearing into the stalls. He's clutching a scroll titled Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, probably pirated from a library somewhere. You brush past a stall selling ceramic animals, camels, lions, elephants, each one painted with dots and lines that look more mystical than decorative. The seller, a tall woman with gold-threaded braids, catches you staring. "They remember your dreams," she says, not entirely joking. Nearby, a boy no older than 10 is grinding roasted coffee beans in a worn mortar. The smell is enough to make your brain flicker awake. Yes, coffee. In Aksum. Long before Starbucks or French presses, it's right here, still green in some sacks, roasted in others, with beans passed down like family stories. A lot of people think coffee started in Yemen, but Ethiopia has its own claims. The story of Kaldi, the goatherd who noticed his goats dancing after eating red berries, is often told like a fairy tale, but some scholars suggest the truth is messier. Maybe it wasn't goats. Maybe it was monks trying to stay awake during midnight prayers. Or maybe, just maybe, it was always meant for sleepy time travelers like you. Either way, you're here for it. The boy offers you a taste of something dark and thick, poured from a clay pot into a cup barely bigger than a thimble. It's strong. Real strong. Like getting kissed on the forehead by an ancient god. You nod in gratitude and move on before your pulse starts breakdancing. Further in, things quiet down. The main market thins into courtyards where craftspeople are setting up slower trades, pottery, ink-making, weaving. A man is carving fine combs from bone while humming a song that sounds like a lullaby for tired furniture. His tools are older than most countries, and you watch as he coaxes delicate teeth into the comb, one slip away from snapping, but he never slips. You realize now that the market isn't a place. It's a rhythm. A slow, looping dance between mouths and hands, eyes and wares, smells and memory. You are a guest in its dream. And you're not quite ready to wake up. You're still in the quieter part of the market now, where the clamor fades into a soft murmur, and the scent of roasting meat gives way to beeswax, sandalwood, and linen hung to dry in the sun. A young girl walks past with a basket of reeds balanced on her head. She doesn't look at you, but a piece of dried fruit falls from her basket, and you pick it up out of reflex. It's a fig, chewy, sun-warmed, and possibly older than monogamy. Aksum wasn't just rich in gold and myrrh, it was rich in time. Time oozes from the cobbled alleys and slips into your sandals. Here, you see it in every frayed woven belt and uneven brick. You pause at a stall where an elderly man is selling old scrolls, some real, some probably cooked up last week using ink made of boiled bark and regret. History for sale, he mutters, laying out pages written in Guizi, the sacred language of the Aksumite priests. You can't read it, of course, but the curves of the script feel like whispers carved into wind. One scroll features a sketch of a tall tower, maybe the famed obelisk of Aksum, though historians still argue whether these were funerary markers, royal totems, or just the ancient version of a flex. You pass under an archway lined with chipped tiles, some still bearing faint patterns of flowers and suns. Beyond it lies a courtyard where people have begun sitting on mats to eat. This isn't fast food, this is slow food before it was cool. Families gather around circular trays, scooping bites from shared bowls with pieces of injera. There's a rhythm to it. Pinch, dip, taste, nod, laugh, repeat. A boy sees you and gestures to join. His mother raises an eyebrow but says nothing. You take a spot on the edge of the mat and are handed a scoop of something unfamiliar. It's a stew, dark red and thick with lentils, spiced with berbera, a blend of chili, fenugreek, garlic, and probably wizardry. The flavor hits you in slow waves, each bite revealing another note. Warm, tangy, slightly feral. No one speaks English here, but a shared smile is its own language. The boy hands you a pickle, a strange vinegary root that puckers your mouth. You nod like you understand. He hands you another. This may be a prank. The grandmother claps twice and brings out a second dish, raw beef cubes mixed with clarified butter and spices. You pause. Historians believe this was a warrior's food, prepared quickly, high in energy, and surprisingly elegant for something that could be eaten while hiding in a bush. Some argue it was fermented slightly to aid digestion, others claim it was a mark of wealth. Either way, it's a bold move for brunch. You chew slowly, politely, and try not to think about how you're basically reenacting a centuries-old Yelp review. Chewy, but regal. Would fight rebels again. 4 stars. As the meal winds down, a young man begins brewing coffee, again. This time with ceremony. He lays out a small circle of grasses and incense, and 3 pots of increasing size. The smell alone makes your ears perk up. The coffee is poured in stages, strong, medium, and mellow. By the 3rd round, it tastes like the warm hand of a friend who tells you it's okay to nap. The tradition is called Buna Tetu, a communal moment of grounding, gossip, and calm. In modern Ethiopia, it's still a daily ritual, but back in ancient Aksum, it might have also carried political weight. Who drank with whom, who poured first, it all mattered. Some scholars suggest alliances were forged over these small sips, the way modern deals are brokered over flat whites in overpriced cafes. You thank the family with a soft bow and slip back into the alleyways. This time, your feet lead you to something different. A small house set back from the street, painted in red and white clay, its doorway draped with beads that click like dry rain as you pass through. Inside, it's cool and dim. Shelves are lined with jars, some filled with powders, others with seeds or oils. A woman wearing dozens of thin copper bracelets sits at a low stool, stirring a thick paste in a bowl made from a gourd. "Perfume," she says simply, waving the bowl under your nose. It's smoky and floral, like a wedding inside a fireplace. She shows you tiny clay molds, used to press the paste into beads worn on strings or woven into hair. You ask how long the scent lasts. "Longer than most promises," she says. Historians have long puzzled over ancient perfume recipes. Without exact documentation, it's mostly guesswork: pine resin, myrrh, crushed petals, a bit of bee glue. Some were worn daily, others only for rituals or royalty. One Roman visitor once complained that Aksumite perfumes made his eyes water like a dishonored senator. Probably a compliment. You leave with a small bead tied to your wrist and the faint feeling you've just signed a contract with time. Back outside, the light is changing. Afternoon now. Shadows stretch lazily across the plaza. You find a quiet spot on the steps of what used to be a royal warehouse, now just a skeleton of stone columns and ivy. You sit, watching a procession of ox carts lumber past. Each cart is painted with swirls and stars, and the oxen wear bells around their horns. It sounds like a lullaby if you squint your ears. A child walks by holding a stick with something fried on the end. You raise an eyebrow. He offers it. It's a piece of dough, fried and dipped in honey. Simple. Timeless. The kind of snack a pharaoh might have eaten during an awkward council meeting. The kind of thing you now wish came in bulk. You chew slowly, letting the sweetness sink in as the wind picks up. A kite flutters in the distance, shaped like a bird, tail flapping. A father runs behind it, laughing. His daughter runs ahead, not looking back. And just like that, the past is happening. You're not watching history, you're sitting inside it, covered in flour and lentils and old perfume. And, oddly, you feel at home. You stand, brushing crumbs off your tunic, or whatever it is you've ended up wearing in this century, and wander farther into the heart of Aksum. The streets are no longer quiet. They're pulsing. A festival? Maybe. Or maybe this is just what Thursdays looked like back then. Vendors begin to drum on overturned water jugs. Not for money. For rhythm. Children clap along in sync, one of them dancing with a raw, untrained abandon that would terrify any ballet instructor. Someone hands you a carved rattle made from gourds and pebbles. You shake it once, timidly. An old man nearby grins, nods, then shakes his head. Apparently, you are offbeat in 2 languages. The pulse of the city comes alive in these everyday sounds. Aksumites didn't just trade gold, they traded stories, rhythms, tiny sparks of joy. The empire stretched from the highlands of Ethiopia to parts of Yemen across the Red Sea. And with that reach came not just spices and silk, but ideas. Ideas that moved in the form of music, language, and yes, even gossip. You pause in front of a stone tablet. It's covered in inscriptions, not just in one language, but 3, Guizi, Sabaean, and Greek. Aksum was multilingual before it was cool. This particular stele is thought to commemorate a victory in war, or a particularly successful trade deal involving an elephant and a disgruntled spice merchant. Historians still argue whether the inscriptions were meant for posterity, propaganda, or just to show off. You run your hand over the script. It's like reading Braille from a dream you almost remember. Nearby, a group of teenage boys are gathered in a circle, playing what appears to be a board game scratched into the dirt with pebbles as pieces. You lean in. They're arguing about strategy, and one boy flips the board dramatically, only to quietly reconstruct it a moment later. The game looks a bit like Mancala, that ancient count-and-capture game played from West Africa to Southeast Asia. There's debate among scholars whether Aksum developed its own variant or borrowed it from traveling merchants. Either way, It's addictive. You watch long enough to forget your feet hurt. Then you play. And lose. Repeatedly. They let you win once out of pity. You pretend it was strategy. They pretend to believe you. Behind the game circle, the scent of smoke rises again, not from incense this time, but from a grill. A man is roasting something flat and leaf-wrapped over hot coals. He waves you over. You approach cautiously. He unwraps the leaf with flair, revealing a soft cake-like round made of teff. It's slightly sweet, dense, and filled with what seems like chopped nuts and something resembling dried mango. He offers you a bite. You take it. This snack is called debo kolo, though there are regional variants. Small, crunchy bread bits, spiced and sweetened, eaten by the handful. Some say it was a traveler's snack, easy to carry and even easier to share. It tastes like sugar, cinnamon, and humble pride. You thank him, and he shrugs, already serving someone else. No one here expects thanks. You start to realize, everyone is moving slowly, but with purpose. There's no rush, no frantic calls, no overbooked calendars. You may not be from this world, but it's starting to feel like a better one. And then you see it. Past the game players, past the food stalls and the singing mothers and the quietly gossiping aunts, you spot a procession. No fanfare, no trumpets. Just gravity. A line of men and women, carrying large vessels on their shoulders, their robes dyed with indigo and henna, approach a wide plaza where stone lions guard a circular platform. On it, a priest or official, or possibly a guy just pretending very convincingly, stands in quiet dignity. He holds a staff topped with what looks like carved ivory. You edge closer, not wanting to intrude. One of the women glances your way and offers a small nod. It's permission enough. What follows isn't a sacrifice, at least not in the dramatic sense. It's more of a ritual offering. Grain is poured into a basin. Perfume beads dropped into fire. The staff-bearer mutters something rhythmic and slow. It's not for show. It's not even loud enough to hear clearly. But it stirs something in you. Aksum wasn't just practical. It was deeply spiritual. Christianity was introduced here early, around the 4th century CE, long before it reached much of Europe. But even before that, there were older beliefs. Animism, ancestor reverence, and likely a solar cult or two. Scholars still debate whether Aksumite kings saw themselves as divine or simply divinely appointed. Either way, there was a sense that life, daily, edible musical life, was part of something much bigger. The procession ends without applause. Just nods. Gratitude. A boy retrieves the staff, and the group disperses. You wander back toward the quieter streets, letting the buzz fade behind you. At a quiet corner, you come across a boy hunched over what looks like a piece of glass. But it's not. It's obsidian, shiny, black, razor-edged. He's napping it, turning it into a small blade with smooth, practiced taps using a stone. You sit beside him. He doesn't speak but offers you a turn. Your attempt results in a stubby pebble. He nods approvingly anyway. Obsidian tools were common in Aksum. For hunting, for rituals, for surgeries, yes, even delicate incisions. Aksumite doctors may have used honey as antiseptic and sponge-like moss to dress wounds. There's even fringe speculation that trepanation, skull drilling, may have existed here. Calm down, it's just a theory. But still, your scalp itches anyway. And here comes your weird fact of the hour. Some Aksumites are believed to have dyed their teeth, yes, teeth, with herbs or ash to show rank or tribal status. Imagine smiling at someone and realizing they're upper class based solely on the tasteful charcoal gray of their molars. You lean back, watching the boy shape the stone, the sun beginning to dip behind the stone-carved skyline. There's a calm here. Even the pigeons seem philosophical. Tomorrow, maybe you'll try the pottery workshop or the camel-taming circle. Maybe you'll track down the rumored honey wine merchant who's only open during eclipses. But for now, your world is this quiet courtyard, the smell of clay, and the whispery rhythm of obsidian tapping against time. The sky is molasses now, deep purple, streaked with orange like someone spilled wine across velvet. You wander through the edge of Aksum's residential quarter, where the wealth fades into quieter stone dwellings, and the air smells more like smoke from cooking fires than perfume or incense. You pass a child chasing a goat twice her size and a man muttering to his wooden sandals, trying to fix a snapped strap with what appears to be chewed bark. You don't ask. You just nod. People here live simply, but not primitively. The homes, though modest, are well constructed, stacked with stone, daubed with mud, roofs thatched or terracotta tiled. Families gather on low stools outside, eating from shared platters. The food is, again, astonishing. Even in the humblest homes, meals matter. A woman gestures you over, pointing to a basket covered with cloth. You hesitate. You're clearly the outsider here, but she insists. So you crouch beside her and unwrap the cloth. Inside are rounds of spongy, sour injera stacked like edible towels. She pinches one off and scoops up a paste of lentils and garlic. You mirror her and bite in. Tangy, earthy, comforting. Injera was, and still is, the edible plate of Ethiopia. Made from fermented teff flour, it's not just food but utensil and symbol. Teff grows fast, even in poor soil, and is rich in iron and protein. It's the quiet overachiever of ancient grains. Scholars say injera's exact origin is fuzzy. Some claim it predates Aksum, others argue it developed in tandem with rising culinary sophistication. You eat slowly, savoring. The woman chuckles at your cautious chewing. Eat like this, she mimes, rolling a piece and flicking her wrist with flair. You try. It flops. She cackles. So do you. Behind her, a pot bubbles with what smells like berbera, Aksum's signature spice blend. Think chili, garlic, fenugreek, and something that whispers danger even while lulling you to sleep. They used it not just in stews, but sometimes in ointments. One traveler once claimed it kept snakes away. Historians still argue whether that was metaphor, exaggeration, or a very spicy misunderstanding. As you thank your host and move on, you begin to notice little shrines embedded in street corners, modest recesses with flowers, polished stones, or charred offerings. Not grand temples. Just whispers of belief. The people here don't announce faith. They live it, folded into the rhythm of their days. You hear the slap of wet fabric against stone and follow it to a communal washing site. Women stand knee-deep in a shallow pool, rinsing garments with rhythmic grace. They gossip and laugh, and the noise echoes across the walls like water music. One woman catches you watching and holds up a long tunic dyed the soft red of ochre. She makes a motion like, "You need this," and again, you don't argue. Clothing in Aksum isn't elaborate, but it's elegant. Cotton tunics, woven shawls, strips dyed with indigo, saffron, or crushed beetles for a rusty red. You remember reading somewhere that some noble families traded specifically for beetle pigment, an import from what is now Eritrea. Who knew bugs could be such high fashion? You ask, without words, how they dye the fabric. She points to a basket of leaves and one dark root that smells suspiciously like overcooked spinach. She mimes the process: soak, mash, soak again, wring, dry. Easy. No. Meditative. Absolutely. It's starting to click. How much of this world is built on repetition, rhythm, care? Not efficiency. Not speed. Just presence. The sun slips lower. A bell rings, not the clanging kind, but a deep, humming sound from what looks like a hanging metal disc. A call to dinner? To prayer? To end-of-day reflection? You never find out, because something else catches your eye: a group of kids rolling hoops down a slope using sticks. You run to join. Naturally. The game is harder than it looks, especially on dirt paths. But soon, you're huffing, grinning, and for a moment, not thinking at all. This too has a long history. Versions of the hoop game existed in ancient Egypt and Rome. Scholars still argue whether Aksum borrowed the idea or invented its own variant with harder rules and more bruised ankles. Someone shouts a word that makes the kids scatter: hyena, maybe? Or just mom's back. Hard to say. Either way, the game dissolves, and you're left panting near a clay well where an old man leans against a carved staff, chewing something green. He offers you a wad. You politely decline. That's cat, leaves with a mild stimulant effect. Still chewed today in parts of East Africa and Yemen. Some say it sharpens thought. Others say it just makes you weirdly chatty about goats. In Aksumite times, it may have been ceremonial or medicinal. Or just something to do after chores. Scholars haven't settled on a single theory. You ask the man, with gestures, what he remembers. He shrugs. Or maybe he's saying, everything. A breeze rustles the grasses behind him. For a second, the city feels like it's holding its breath. Then, just as quickly, it exhales, smoke rising from cook fires, laughter echoing down alleyways, a low hum of lullabies drifting out of doorways. Night is here. And here's your delightfully odd historical tidbit for the night. Some Aksumite homes, especially wealthier ones, are believed to have kept trained guinea fowl as guards. Not dogs. Not parrots. Angry little birds. Apparently, they were loud, territorial, and entirely unimpressed by burglars. Or guests. Or neighbors. You wonder how long it would take to train one. Or if the birds did all the training. You climb a short stone wall for a better view. The city shimmers with torchlight. No electric glow, no buzzing. Just fire. Flickering, alive. In the distance, something howls. Not a hyena. Just the night, perhaps. You lie back on the warm stone, arms behind your head. The stars here are impossibly sharp. You count them, lose count, start again. Tomorrow, maybe you'll wake up in your own bed. Or maybe you'll wake here, with beetle-dyed robes and spiced breath and the low hum of ancient history wrapped around you like a well-worn blanket. But for now, you're just another person under the sky, quietly existing in a world that forgot how to hurry. A rooster crows somewhere far too early, but you're already awake, sort of. The stone you slept on wasn't exactly soft, but something about it held you gently, like a polite reminder that you didn't quite belong here, yet. You sit up and stretch, your spine popping like a xylophone in need of tuning. There's dew on your tunic, the one you definitely didn't own yesterday. You rise, barefoot, and wander toward the smell of something cooking, sweet, spicy, and faintly floral. A small cluster of vendors are setting up for what looks like a bustling open-air breakfast market. No carts, just woven mats rolled out on the ground, and wooden trays stacked with things you can't name, though your stomach is ready to make introductions. You crouch beside one elderly vendor with cheeks like dried figs and eyes like she's seen several empires fall. She offers you a slice of what looks like fried dough topped with powdered bark. You take it, because why wouldn't you? It's oddly delicious, slightly chewy, dusted with something like cinnamon but tinged with pepper. Later, you'll learn this breakfast treat was made from enset, a starchy root that's fermented underground and pounded into dough. It's a cousin of the banana but without the glamour. Often called false banana, it doesn't get the credit it deserves, but it fed entire regions quietly for centuries. That's enset, the introvert of crops. A traveler once wrote that Aksumites stored their enset reserves underground for years, and it somehow stayed edible. Historians still argue whether this technique was developed through trial and error or some ancient fermentation science we barely understand. Either way, it works, and now you've got breakfast, fermented, fried, and peppery. You wander further down the avenue where merchants sell bundles of herbs, clay pots shaped like upside-down mushrooms, and brightly dyed scarves that shimmer when the wind hits just right. A teenage boy with a shock of curly hair calls to you, holding out a steaming gourd. You raise your eyebrows, and he grins. Coffee, he says, one of the only words you understand instantly. That's right. You're in the land where coffee was born. Legend says a goat herder named Kaldi first noticed his goats acting like little maniacs after eating red berries from a certain tree. Intrigued, he tried it himself. Result, wide eyes, faster heart, and several nights of absolutely no sleep. The berries were brewed, shared, tweaked, and over centuries became the drink your modern soul craves every morning. But in Aksum, coffee wasn't just about caffeine. It was ritual. The boy invites you to sit. He lights a small coal pot and roasts the beans in a shallow pan. The scent is dark, nutty, slightly floral. Once roasted, he grinds them with a stone and pours water into a jabina, an elegant clay coffee pot with a round base and long neck. The first pour is strong, black, and slightly gritty. He passes you a small cup. No sugar. No milk. Just heat and history. The second cup is smoother. The third is for the spirits. He pours a splash into the earth beside him. Respect. Ritual. Community. Even now, in modern Ethiopian homes, this ceremony endures. It's not just a caffeine fix, it's how mornings begin, problems are discussed, guests are welcomed. The process is slow by design. You're not meant to rush. You sip, eyes closed. The coffee is strong, almost smoky, with notes of citrus and earth. It tastes like secrets and soil. Nearby, a group of musicians begin to play. Flutes, lyres, hand drums made from stretched animal skin. The music loops and weaves, no sharp turns, just circular phrases that spiral like incense. One woman sings in Guiz, the ancient liturgical language of Aksum. Even if you don't understand the words, the tone tells the story. Mourning, wonder, triumph. Or breakfast-related complaints. It's hard to say. You start tapping your foot and realize several locals are already swaying. A toddler, completely unsupervised, is spinning in place with her arms out like a windmill in crisis. She bumps into a goat. The goat remains unimpressed. Then comes something unexpected. A line of dancers in feathered headdresses and embroidered robes enter the square. You watch, mesmerized, as they begin a slow, stomping circle. This, your coffee friend whispers, is a ritual dance for good harvest. It's rare to see it outside rural festivals, but today, the city is celebrating a bountiful trade season. That means blessings, feasting, and ceremonial dancing, even if you clearly have 2 left feet and the goat still hates you. Here's your quirky historical tidbit for the day. Aksumites used to believe that clapping at dawn could ward off evil spirits. It was common to hear rhythmic applause echoing through alleyways before sunrise. Some say it was spiritual cleansing. Others think it just annoyed the hyenas into leaving. Scholars still argue whether it was symbolic, practical, or just people being people with too much time and very expressive hands. You leave the square, following a winding alley that leads to an artisan quarter, rows of open-air workshops where craftspeople carve, weave, fire, and paint. One man is carving a stool from acacia wood, humming to himself. The stool legs are shaped like lions. He catches you looking and gestures for you to try. You sit. It wobbles once, then settles, surprisingly comfortable for something made with no nails or screws. These aren't just chairs, they're thrones, each with its own symbolism. Lions for strength. Elephants for wisdom. Some stools are carved with fish or birds, each animal telling a quiet story in curved wood and burnished lines. You ask about the tools, and he shows you a bag filled with flint blades, copper chisels, and something that looks like a spoon with anger issues. The work is delicate, time-consuming, no shortcuts. And yet these pieces are traded for spices, fabrics, even gold. One artisan, an elderly woman weaving baskets, shows you a pattern she calls wind through palms. Another calls his design the sleep of stars. No labels, no prices, just artistry passed down in silence. As the sun climbs, the alley warms, and the scent of wood smoke mixes with pressed flowers drying on woven mats. The world here is textured, slow, alive. And you, once a visitor, are beginning to understand how to be still. A soft wind rises, and you follow it. It winds you through narrow stone alleys where purple shadows still linger, and the walls are lined with drying herbs and cracked frescoes that whisper stories in faded ochre. You pass a pair of children playing some kind of stick-and-bean game. There are rules, clearly, but they're changing by the minute. One kid makes goat noises, the other counters with dramatic death spirals. It's unclear who's winning, but their laughter bounces off the stone like music with no notes. You turn the corner and stumble into what might be a public bathhouse? Wait, no. Scratch that. It's a scent studio, of sorts. A sunken chamber carved into limestone, with small bowls arranged in a spiral. Myrrh, frankincense, wild basil, and something smoky and sweet you can't quite place. The woman in charge is part perfumer, part priestess, and entirely unbothered by your confusion. She's preparing incense blends for a temple nearby, grinding ingredients on a basalt slab and humming as she works. She motions for you to kneel. Then, with a wink, she waves a fan over one of the bowls, sending up a small cloud of thick, fragrant smoke. You inhale carefully. It smells like old wood, sharp citrus, and a memory you didn't know you had. In ancient Aksum, incense wasn't just fragrance, it was economy. They were one of the largest exporters of frankincense and myrrh in the ancient world, sending their resin treasures along camel caravans to Egypt, Rome, and beyond. These dried tree saps were worth their weight in gold, sometimes more, and temples across the ancient world depended on Aksum supplies to keep their gods happy and their air mysteriously smoky. Historians still argue whether Aksum was the origin point of this trade or a nexus for resin harvested from deeper south, but either way, they had the branding locked down. Spiritual incense from the holy hills sounds better than tree sap in a bowl, doesn't it? And speaking of branding, this next part might surprise you. You make your way toward a small open-air building filled with carved stones and what appears to be an early postal counter. The man seated at the front nods at you, clearly on his second nap of the morning. On the wall behind him are stone panels carved with tight rows of script, GUI-Z letters, elegantly stacked like a crossword puzzle from another dimension. But here's the twist. Some of them aren't religious decrees or tax records. Some are receipts. Yes. You've just entered one of the ancient world's earliest record-keeping offices. You pick up a smooth clay disc with markings etched around the rim. It looks decorative, until you're shown the stamp used to make it. Merchants would carry stamped seals like these to verify that shipments had been received, payments made, contracts honored. It's history's fanciest invoice. One quirky detail catches your eye, a seal shaped like a giraffe's head. The official explains, with a sleepy grin, that this belonged to a trader who specialized in exotic animals, birds with 5-note calls, lizards that changed color, and yes, the occasional baby giraffe for a very eccentric prince in India. Apparently, trade across the Red Sea wasn't just for textiles and spices, it included very confused animals on very long boat rides. By now, the midday sun is flattening shadows and making the stone streets glow gold. You duck into an arched hall lined with animal motifs and stars. The stars, you realize, aren't random, they're a celestial calendar. Aksumite priests used them to track planting seasons, solstice rituals, and temple days. You trace one with your finger and feel the etching, soft as chalk. Then your guide, a young girl no older than 12 but with the posture of someone who knows things, leads you toward a massive obelisk standing in the distance. You've seen it before, barely, rising like a silent exclamation point over the city. As you approach, it becomes enormous, looming, not in a scary way, but in the way that reminds you how small you are in the timeline of things. The steely fields are breathtaking. Some are standing, others fallen like sleeping giants. Each one is carved to look like a many-story building, with faux windows, doors, and even little knobs that hint at architectural details. The tallest surviving one is over 20 meters high and weighs roughly 160 tons. Built with no modern cranes. No steel. Just ambition and patience. And here's your scholarly head-scratcher. Historians still debate exactly how the Aksumites moved and erected these stones. Some suggest giant wooden rollers and earthen ramps. Others whisper about lost engineering techniques that defy explanation. One theory even suggests that the carving was done after the stone was already upright, meaning artisans climbed it like very focused monkeys with chisels and no fear of falling. You run your hand along the base. The stone is warm, slightly pitted, like a time-worn loaf of bread. The carvings have softened with age, but they're still there, windows that never opened, doors no one ever walked through. A city of illusions carved in stone. One quirky detail. Some of these obelisks were actually tomb markers. The Aksumites believed in an afterlife but weren't super literal about it. The idea was to create a symbolic house for the spirit, a carved home for the soul to live in style, even after death. You wonder if they included ghostly plumbing or just let spirits rough it. You sit in the shade of one of these stelae and look out at the city. Clay roofs, incense smoke, children shouting, traders haggling over saffron, and someone loudly arguing with a goat. The goat, to be fair, started it. The world is loud but not overwhelming, ancient but alive. And for a moment, you feel what they must have felt, surrounded by beauty, ritual, and quiet innovation. Not bad for a city most modern textbooks give one paragraph. A small bell rings in the distance, a soft, hollow chime that echoes up through the stone alleys like a daydream that forgot where it was going. You follow it without much thought. The sun has mellowed into a lazy afternoon gold, casting long shadows like finger paintings across the worn pathways of Aksum. You find yourself near the eastern quarter of the city, where the scent of honey and warm dough tickles your nose like an accidental memory. Turns out, it's snack time. You meander past a series of clay ovens shaped like overturned bowls. Women in colorful shawls are carefully pulling thin, spongy rounds of bread from the hot surfaces. Injera, the staple flatbread that's as ancient as the hills and just as foundational. One of them hands you a piece without a word, just a raised eyebrow and a "you clearly look like someone who needs to chew something" expression. It's warm, sour, soft, like a pancake that went to finishing school. And it pairs perfectly with a small bowl of honeyed lentils and roasted chickpeas that someone else offers up, because apparently you look extremely underfed by Aksumite standards. Or maybe you just have one of those "please feed me" faces. And here's the oddly soothing historical tidbit. Injera was likely being made in this same style over 1,600 years ago, using teff, an ancient grain native to the Ethiopian highlands. Tiny but mighty, teff is so small that one handful contains thousands of seeds. It was nutritious, fast-growing, and pretty much drought-proof, a small miracle in grain form. You settle on a low stool and watch the cooking process, mesmerized by the fluid motion of hands pouring batter, flipping flatbread, stirring bubbling lentils. It's hypnotic, rhythmic, a lullaby of kitchen labor. You learn that food here isn't just fuel, it's social glue. Meals are shared, eaten from one dish, and always preceded by a quick rinse of hands and a joke if someone's in the mood. And someone always is. As your lentils vanish, a man in a faded tunic begins to tell a story in Guizi, the ancient language of the elite. You don't understand the words, but you get the vibe. His audience, a group of wide-eyed kids and 2 dozing goats, laughs, gasps, and occasionally throws bits of dried fig at each other when the tension gets too much. Turns out, he's telling the tale of a talking ox who solved a land dispute by mooing in legal syntax. The ox is a beloved folk hero, apparently. His name translates roughly to Sir Moo Justice. But behind the goat giggles and fig throws is something richer, the deep tradition of oral storytelling in Aksumite culture. While inscriptions and coins carried the official word, stories were how history truly traveled, from grandmother to grandson, from firepit to field. And here's your academic curveball. Historians still argue whether Aksum had a formal education system or if all learning was apprenticeship-based. There's evidence of priests teaching boys to read Guizi in temples, but very little about wider schooling. It's like trying to piece together a puzzle made of whispers. You finish your meal and stretch your legs, following a group of kids carrying wooden flutes carved to look like animals. They lead you toward a cluster of rounded houses, tukels, made of stone and thatch, with interiors that surprise you. The walls are painted with murals, birds mid-flight, crescent moons, abstract patterns that feel more symbolic than decorative. One particularly odd one catches your eye, a woman riding a turtle, holding a bouquet of onions. You ask what it means, and your tiny guide simply shrugs. "It's good luck," she says. Or a warning. Or maybe it's just funny. So yes, ancient home decor was as cryptic and personal as your aunt's weird lighthouse bathroom. You sit for a while in the shade, watching the murals shift with the light. Then you notice something tucked in the corner of the tukel, a small lyre resting against a woven basket. It's called a krar, and when the oldest child plucks a few notes, the tune comes out wobbly but comforting, like a lullaby walking home after a long day. Music in Aksum was tied to daily life, to worship, to work, to wooing someone you hoped wouldn't laugh at your singing voice. Some melodies were passed down for generations, never written, only felt. Others were made up on the spot, like spoken dreams. One fringe detail you'll love: there's a theory, unproven but charming, that certain Aksumite musicians trained birds to sing along with specific refrains. Whether or not that's true, the image of a man playing lyre while a parrot offers backup vocals is now living rent-free in your brain. Eventually, the sun dips lower, and you find yourself pulled toward the city's outer edge, where gardens bloom behind walls of woven reed. The air here changes, cooler, more floral. There are plots of lavender, lemongrass, wild sorrel, and even a few stalks of sorghum swaying like sleepy dancers. A woman in green robes kneels by a raised bed, harvesting something red and bulbous. She offers one to you, hibiscus. Tangy, bright, and usually steeped into tea. The people of Aksum drank it chilled when they could afford the time to chill it, and warm when they couldn't. You sip the tea. It's sour in the best way, like a polite slap to the senses, and as you sit with it, you realize you've been fed, entertained, sung to, and now hydrated. Aksum didn't just know how to build a kingdom. It knew how to keep people feeling, well, human. One final quirky detail as the breeze picks up. Apparently, some farmers used to talk to their plants, not just in a general good vibes way, but in structured chants. The belief was that spoken blessings could ward off pests and encourage fruiting. The science on that is, pending. But admit it, you're going to talk to your basil next time you water it. And now, the sky begins to turn lavender, and the city's rooftops glint with golden light, like sleepy eyes blinking shut. Time to drift again. The sky above Aksum cools to a deep cobalt as dusk settles in. The golden light slips quietly behind the hills like a cat sneaking off for a nap, and the city changes tempo once again. Where the heat of day had encouraged stillness, now the cool hush of evening coaxes gentle movement, slow, deliberate, and faintly musical. You're drawn now to a curious structure near the city center, a domed hall ringed with carved columns and low-slung lanterns that flicker like sleepy fireflies. Inside, the scent of resin and old papyrus hangs in the air, and soft voices echo from its circular walls. This is a place of scrolls, one of Aksum's scriptoria, where priests and scribes gather to transcribe sacred texts in Guiz, the liturgical language of Ethiopia. The script is meticulous, looped, and deliberate. A scribe shows you a section he's working on, worn parchment, ink made from charred plant matter, and stylized lettering so neat it could make a modern calligrapher cry into their pen set. And here's your mainstream fact. Aksum was one of the earliest African civilizations to adopt Christianity, officially converting in the 4th century under King Izana. This made it one of the first Christian empires, alongside Rome and Armenia. The Guiz script was used to transcribe biblical texts, hymns, and theological debates, though, let's be honest, you're more interested in whether someone secretly doodled a bored lion in the margins. The scholarly debates get spicy here, too. Historians still argue whether Izana's conversion was politically motivated, to cozy up to powerful Christian neighbors like Byzantium, or a genuine shift in spiritual belief. Or both. You know how rulers are, always hedging their bets, one divine favor at a time. As you stand in the scriptorium's amber light, a monk invites you to try your hand with a reed pen. You do. It goes poorly. The lines squiggle like a worm on roller skates, and your single attempt at the Guiz letter A with diaresis one looks like a startled onion. He nods politely, as if to say, art is subjective, and gently takes the pen back. Moving through the city's spiritual life, you find your way next to a modest chapel, its stone exterior hugged by creeping vines. Here, a group of elderly women sit in a crescent, humming a soft chant that seems less like music and more like a form of breathing. One holds a hand drum, kebero, and the rhythm is gentle, deliberate, like a heartbeat underwater. These women are part of a devotional order, not quite nuns, not quite lay people. Their role is to maintain oral liturgy, lead prayers, and care for the poor. You offer them a bow. They nod without pausing their chant, as if greeting you in another plane entirely. One woman beckons you closer and shares a tale from her childhood, a vision of Saint Frumentius, an actual historical figure, who helped bring Christianity to Aksum and was later canonized. According to her, he once stopped a lion from mauling a shepherd boy by quoting scripture at it. Whether or not that's true, she insists the moral is clear: never travel without good verses. You laugh softly, because of course, a holy lion whisperer. That tracks. Now, as full night settles, the city glows in candlelight and slow, pulsing fires from braziers. It's as if the stars have come down to warm themselves among the humans. You wander again, and this time find a courtyard near the palace district. Here, scribes and philosophers, some in priestly robes, others in merchants' tunics, gather for evening debates. Not the shouty kind you'd expect from modern pundits, but the kind where everyone speaks so gently you wonder if the entire argument is about whether lentils are superior to chickpeas. Turns out, tonight's topic is even sleepier: whether time is a straight line or a spiral. Someone cites an old Aksumite proverb: the river returns to its spring. Another counters with, but it does not return with the same fish. You consider chiming in, but you're still mentally processing that lion thing. Curious fact for the philosophy fans: the Aksumite elite were known to engage with both Greek and Indian philosophical ideas, thanks to trade and travel. Fragments of Hellenistic logic, Indian cosmology, and even Babylonian star charts found their way into Aksum's thought circles, often translated and blended with local traditions. It was a patchwork of ponderings, a buffet for the mind, if you will. And here's a fringe gem. One surviving Aksumite text describes the stars as sleeping embers in the robe of night. Poetic, yes, but some scholars wonder if it implies a rudimentary understanding of celestial combustion, or just someone waxing lyrical after too much fermented honey wine. Speaking of which, you're handed a small ceramic cup filled with a sweet, golden drink. It's tej, a traditional Ethiopian honey wine, often homemade, slightly fizzy, and surprisingly potent. You sip cautiously. It tastes like mead that's just finished a yoga class, relaxed, floral, vaguely philosophical. The conversation swirls around you. Someone posits that dreams are how ancestors visit us. Another replies that maybe dreams are just what happens when the soul walks without the feet. You quietly write that one down. Could be merch material. As the night deepens, drums echo faintly from the northern district, slow, patterned, the kind of rhythm that turns thoughts to vapor. You follow the sound like it's tugging you on a silk thread, past sleeping vendors, resting donkeys, and quiet fountains whispering to the stars. You arrive at a moonlit clearing where dancers move in slow, synchronized loops. It's not a celebration, exactly, it's a ritual. Maybe of thanks. Maybe of remembrance. Or maybe they just like dancing by moonlight. Either way, it's beautiful. And in a city where kings walk alongside farmers, where saints talk to lions, and where bread comes with a side of ancient poetry, it somehow feels completely normal. Your eyes feel heavier now. The rhythm of the drums mixes with your own heartbeat, and the night folds around you like soft linen. No need to rush. There's more to see. But for now, just rest in this warm, humming stillness. The stars are keeping watch. The soft rhythm of the drums still lingers in your ears as you drift slowly toward the edges of Aksum, where the city thins and the wilderness begins to breathe again. Here, the air is cooler, scented with eucalyptus and something slightly smoky, perhaps the last remnants of a charcoal fire used to roast barley or boil water for coffee. Ah yes, coffee. You wouldn't think of it as sleep-friendly, but don't worry, this is more of a ceremonial affair. The kind of slow, meditative preparation that calms you more than it energizes. In fact, you're just in time to witness a traditional bunna ceremony. A family has gathered on woven mats near a low fire, their clay jabina pot balanced with practiced ease. Green coffee beans roast in a small pan, releasing that rich, nutty aroma that seems to float upward and curl like incense. The woman tending the process moves with deliberate grace, wafting the smoke, stirring the beans, and occasionally smiling at your quiet fascination. Mainstream fact incoming: Ethiopia is widely believed to be the birthplace of coffee. According to legend, a goat herder named Kaldi noticed his goats were particularly hyper after eating red berries from a certain shrub. Curious, he tried the berries himself, because why not emulate goats, right? And the rest is jittery history. But here's the twist most sleep-deprived scholars miss. Historians still argue whether the story of Kaldi was a later invention, perhaps added to give a neat origin myth to something far older. Some even suggest early coffee use was less about wakefulness and more about ritual. So next time you grab a latte, just remember, you might be participating in an ancient rite. Minus the goats. A young boy offers you a tiny ceramic cup. The liquid is inky, fragrant, barely sweetened, and, surprisingly, comforting. Sipped slowly, it feels more like a lullaby than a pick-me-up. You wonder if your local barista would agree to play a hand drum and chant your name while making your cappuccino. As the family continues their evening routine, you're invited to help sort more beans. You do, though your sorting technique is admittedly chaotic. Someone tactfully redirects you toward the popcorn instead. Yes, popcorn. It's common in Ethiopian coffee ceremonies, a snack that somehow makes everything feel more like a sleepover. You crunch quietly, trying not to look too thrilled. From the family hearth, your path meanders toward a gently sloping hillside that offers a panoramic view of Aksum. The city twinkles in the distance, torches, lanterns, and fires flickering in little clusters like scattered constellations. And here, perched on a flat boulder, an old man sits with a stringed instrument, an ancient krar. Its soft, harp-like tones drift into the cool air. He's playing a tune that sounds half lullaby, half lament. You sit beside him without a word. The music does the talking. He begins to sing in a low, worn voice. The lyrics speak of a love lost to the Red Sea, of a ship that never returned, and of dreams that visit like birds, only staying if you remain perfectly still. You ask, quietly, whether the story is real. He shrugs. Stories are truer than facts, he says. Facts fade. Stories cling. You write that one down too. And now for your curious tidbit. Aksumite sailors were believed to navigate by star position and cloud color. Yes, cloud color. Mariners noted subtle shifts in shade at dawn and dusk to gauge weather, wind, and even proximity to land. Historians still argue whether this was common knowledge or closely guarded trade secret passed among elite navigators. Back on the hillside, a light breeze picks up. You pull your cloak, or blanket, or imaginary cozy burrito, just a bit tighter. Somewhere nearby, a hyrax calls out. It sounds like a laugh and a sneeze got married and became an animal. You're told these little creatures are relatives of elephants, which feels like a weird cosmic prank. Nature loves a curveball. The old man stops playing and tells you about his childhood. About watching Roman envoys arrive with their long cloaks and weird sandals. About elephants in royal parades, and coins bearing the face of King Izana, who always looked mildly surprised, as if he just walked in on someone eating his figs. Then he tells you about the Queen of Sheba. You perk up. Legend has it she came from this very region, Aksum itself, or nearby Saba in modern Yemen. Some say she ruled a vast kingdom straddling the Red Sea, and visited King Solomon in Jerusalem to test his wisdom with riddles. One such riddle: what walks without legs, murmurs without lips, and drinks without thirst? It's a shadow, probably. Or possibly a metaphor for Instagram. Whether or not she truly visited Solomon, the Aksumites claimed her proudly. Her legacy, they believed, lived on in Ethiopian dynasties that traced their bloodlines back to that fabled union. Historians still argue whether this genealogy was myth-making for power, or a whispered truth passed down through generations too quietly to be heard by outsiders. The old man falls quiet, fingers trailing across the crar's strings once more, as if coaxing the stars to sleep. You rise and make your way further along the path, guided now by the thin glow of moonlight reflecting off smooth stone. The path curls back into Aksum, returning you to the bustling inner streets where a soft night market is still barely alive. Vendors yawn beside baskets of salted lentils, sesame sweets, and fermented teff. Children sleep beneath the tables, curled up in dreams of something sugary and slightly mischievous. One woman gestures you over to try a sweet rolled in banana leaf. You do. It tastes like honey, smoke, and something herbal you can't quite place. She tells you it's made with gesho, a plant used in both cooking and brewing. The word sounds like a secret. Nearby, a game unfolds on a stone board, pebbles in carved hollows, moved by hand and memory. It's Jabita, a traditional Mancala game that some say traces back to Aksumite times. Two elders play silently, only nodding when a particularly good move is made. You sit to watch, lulled by the soft clack of stones and the faint rustle of sleep in the marketplace. You begin to notice how the city itself seems to breathe. It's not just noise and light, it has rhythm. Sleep comes not in silence, but in cadence, the lull of voices, the swish of robes, the gentle gurgle of fountains. Even the donkeys snore rhythmically. One last image clings to your mind as you find a quiet bench and pull your cloak around you. The sight of the stars above Aksum, brighter than you remembered, and the faint sound of the crar, still echoing somewhere in the hills. You close your eyes. You dream you're floating, no, gliding, through time itself. The crar's melody fades, and in its place comes a soft murmuring, the buzz of a crowd gathering for something momentous. You blink slowly, and suddenly you're standing under a sun that burns a little cooler, in a city that has grown somehow both larger and quieter. You're still in Aksum, but centuries have passed. The empire is older now, its borders thinner, its temples more worn. Yet life continues with a kind of resilient dignity, as if every stone and street corner has agreed, let's keep going, just a little longer. You step into a shaded courtyard where monks in flowing robes carry scrolls tied with leather cords. Their sandals slap softly on the flagstones, their whispers echo like distant lullabies. One of them notices you, offers a nod, and beckons. You follow into a low-ceilinged chamber cooled by thick stone walls. This is a scriptorium, a place of copying, studying, preserving. A monk holds up a scroll covered in tight gooey script. It smells of parchment, beeswax, and the faintest trace of incense. You imagine each letter carefully drawn under lamplight, night after night. Mainstream fact: the Aksumite Empire was one of the earliest African civilizations to adopt Christianity, and it became a vital center for early Christian learning and manuscript production. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church still traces its roots to these very halls of ink and prayer. You sit cross-legged on the floor, watching as a younger monk mixes pigment from crushed minerals and water, preparing to illustrate the margin of a new manuscript. "This one is for Saint Yared," he says softly. "The one who gave us the music." And there it is again, music. Gentle, ancient, comforting. The tradition of Zema, Ethiopia's sacred chant, born from the voice of Saint Yared. They say birds taught him to sing, or maybe he just listened carefully to the rain. The melody flows in complex, fluid patterns unlike any Western hymn. There's a rhythm, but not quite a beat. A rise and fall, but no climax. It's like someone exhaling forever. You close your eyes, letting the chant carry you like a raft on still waters. And just when you begin to drift, a bell chimes from the outer courtyard. The monks rise slowly, carrying their scrolls. One leaves behind a sheet of music marked with tiny dots and curves. You look closely. It resembles no notation you know, more like a secret map drawn by a dreamer. Quirky detail for the night. Ancient Ethiopian musical notation, maleket, doesn't show pitch or rhythm in a strict way. Instead, it uses symbols that hint at melodic contours and emotional tone. In other words, it's a bit like being handed a treasure map with no X, just vibes. And somehow, it works. You step out into the dusk again, finding the monastery's outer walls lined with low lanterns and carved crosses. A young novice offers you a simple meal, injera folded around lentils and stewed greens. You eat quietly on a stone ledge, surrounded by a silence that feels alive. As you finish, someone points toward a carved door with golden trim. You're told it leads to a special archive, guarded not by locks but by memory. Only those who can recite certain psalms from heart may enter. You smile politely and take the hint, this one's not for tourists. But the idea of memory as key lingers in your mind. A debate floats through your ears, two scholars discussing whether Aksum's decline was due to shifting trade routes or climate change. Historians still argue, one says, whether the port of Adulis silted up naturally or was sabotaged by rivals. You lean in, but they've already moved on to comparing goat hide bindings on 8th-century Bibles. Scholarly ADHD, you suppose. You move toward the edge of the monastery and down a narrow path lined with olive trees. The moon is high now, casting long silver shadows. Somewhere nearby, a low growl echoes, and then a bark. A guard dog, or a very dramatic hyena. You quietly pick up your pace. Suddenly, you're at a well. Not just any well, this one has steps spiraling downward, carved right into the rock. You descend, feeling the cool air wrap around you like a shawl. At the bottom, you find a small stone basin where water still trickles in. You dip your fingers. It's freezing and clear. An inscription on the wall reads, "The Queen washed her hands here." A local joke. Or a lost memory. A man with a lantern appears, startling you slightly. He's the keeper of the well. Or so he says. You ask if the water is really sacred. He shrugs. All water is sacred when you're thirsty. Another quote for your imaginary journal. Back up the steps, the city sleeps more deeply. The music has stopped, the markets have folded, and even the moon seems quieter now. You wander into a grove where someone has left a fire smoldering beside a stone tablet etched with faded lines. You run your hand across the stone, tracing the ancient Guiz characters. You can't read them, but the sensation is oddly comforting, like brushing the back of your hand against the past and finding it still warm. A final, dreamy fact before the night deepens further. Some of these steely, towering stone obelisks carved with false windows and doors were meant to represent multi-story homes for the dead. It's like ancient Aksum said, why shouldn't the afterlife have a penthouse? You lie back on the grass, the ground warm from the day's heat. Somewhere in the trees, a bird chirps a note that echoes one of Saint Yared's chants. You can't tell if it's real or memory or dream. Doesn't matter. For now, you're just here. Wrapped in shadow, tucked in by time, lulled by the breath of an empire still whispering through the hills. You stir ever so slightly, not fully waking, just adjusting your place in the fabric of the dream. The breeze carries the scent of frankincense and stone dust now, as though the earth itself has just turned a page. You're no longer in the grove. Somehow, the world has rearranged itself around you, and you find yourself in a small chamber carved directly into rock. It's dim, but a few shafts of early morning light spill through narrow slits near the ceiling, painting long lines of gold onto the floor. You're inside one of Aksum's rock-hewn churches. No, not the famous Lalibela churches. Those would come later, miles and centuries away. This one is older. Simpler. A proto-church, built when Christianity was still freshly woven into the tapestry of the empire. Your fingertips brush along the walls, and you can feel where tools chipped into stone, not to decorate, but simply to create space for prayer. A crude cross is etched above a small alcove, perhaps an altar, perhaps just a niche for storing candles or hope. Someone enters behind you. A priest, maybe. He walks barefoot, his robe barely whispering against the ground. In his hands, he carries a censer. It swings gently, leaving behind little ghosts of smoke. He hums something under his breath, not quite a chant, not quite a lullaby. He gestures for you to sit. You do. Silence follows, and it's not awkward. It's the kind that feels like a room exhaling after being remembered. Then the priest says softly, "We still argue whether this church was built for a king or by one." It's unclear whether he's speaking of historians or monks, or whether he just likes a bit of philosophical mystery with his morning prayers. Outside, the city is beginning to stir. Traders sweep dust from their thresholds. A baker opens her clay oven and pulls out small, round loaves still steaming from the night's last embers. You walk past, and she offers you one with a nod. It smells of barley and charcoal and quiet triumph. You wander toward the outskirts again, following a goat path that curls through a field of half-buried stones. At first you think they're just random debris. Then you realize they're the tops of ancient stelae. Some fallen, others sinking. Like teeth of forgotten giants. You crouch near one and notice tiny carvings, zigzag patterns, door-shaped recesses, a series of dots like punctuation marks in a language time forgot. You wonder if the dots meant, "Pause here," or "Mind the ghosts," or simply, "This was mine." Dreamlike digression. Did you know some stelae were capped with what looked like false wooden beams, carved entirely from stone? Archaeologists believe it was a symbolic effort to make the stone resemble a traditional Aksumite home. It was a house for the afterlife, built by people who believed their dead should dwell in comfort, not darkness. Further along the path, you reach a dry ravine where a fig tree leans dramatically toward the sun. Beneath it lies a half-excavated building, a storage vault, perhaps, or the ruin of an old treasury. You descend carefully into its shadow, half expecting to find coins or scrolls. Instead, you find something stranger, a pile of clay tokens shaped like animals, each stamped with a different pattern. Trade markers, maybe? Or pieces from a forgotten board game. Historians still argue whether they served as receipts, ritual offerings, or toys. You imagine someone centuries ago, pocketing one and whispering, "This guarantees one goat, one favor, and a good story later." Nearby, a small carved lion watches you with a mildly amused expression. You bow to it, just in case. As you return to the city proper, you pass beneath a half-crumbled arch where vines have crept in like curious visitors. A small plaque, likely modern, tells you this was once the gate to a foreign quarter. Traders from India, Arabia, Byzantium all pass through here, bringing silk, spices, and gossip. Here's your final sleep fact for tonight. Aksum's coinage was among the first in the world to use the Christian cross as a symbol, long before it became a global emblem. This wasn't just piety, it was PR. Aksum's kings wanted to signal both faith and power in every palm that held their currency. A cross in gold said, "We matter. You matter too, you know." Your final stop is a rooftop. It's flat, lined with clay pots growing herbs and tiny red flowers. A small cat sleeps in a coil near the edge, and a woman, maybe a grandmother, maybe an oracle, sits weaving a basket as if she's tying time into a spiral. She pats the stone beside her. You sit. She hums something, not a song, but the rhythm of weaving. She asks if you've seen the Queen's bath. You say no. She smiles. Good. That means you still have something to dream about. And with that, you rest your head back against the warm stone, listening to the hum of the basket and the distant bell of a goat with a dramatic sense of timing. The city breathes. You exhale. Sleep at last arrives like a soft-footed courier, bearing fig loaves, secret riddles, and a lullaby in Gui Z. Good night, Traveler of Empires. Word count, 1099. Total story runtime, 44 minutes of gentle narration. The world resets again, quietly, like a book being closed between one dream and the next. Now you're reclining under a sun-soaked canopy, your back against worn silk cushions that smell faintly of old jasmine and salt. The air buzzes with lazy energy. Palm fronds shiver with the occasional breeze, and beyond a thin linen curtain, waves roll toward a curved shoreline. You hear the distant thump of drums, leisurely, ceremonial, perhaps even bored with their own beat. Welcome to the Swahili coast, somewhere in the 14th century. You're in Kilwa Kisiwani, one of the most prosperous trading ports of its day. And yes, you've time-traveled again. Don't worry. That fig bread from Aksum is still digesting in your dream stomach, and you're still you. Just a little sweatier. It's humid here. A merchant passes by in a long embroidered tunic, balancing an elegant bundle on his shoulder wrapped in indigo cloth. Inside? Hard to say. Could be ivory, could be ambergris, could be dried cloves wrapped with letters from Oman. Trade here isn't just goods, it's stories, written and unwritten, carried by monsoon winds. You rise and begin to stroll, sandals slapping against coralstone paths polished smooth by centuries of footsteps. The buildings around you are whitewashed and sturdy, their walls thick to keep the heat out. Coral and lime, local, sustainable, shockingly modern for a medieval city. You pause to sip water from a carved coconut ladle, passed to you by a laughing girl who scolds you gently in Swahili for walking around without a head covering. You apologize with an exaggerated shrug, and she rolls her eyes in that universal tween way. Somewhere nearby, a classroom echoes with the soft murmur of Quran recitation. Kilwa is devout but relaxed. Friday prayer is sacred. So is the afternoon nap. You find yourself drawn toward the great mosque. At its peak, it was the largest stone mosque south of the Sahara. No domes, no soaring minarets, just a forest of squat stone columns in a cool, dark prayer hall. You wander inside, feeling the temperature drop 5 degrees instantly. The floor is sand. Your toes curl into it like they remember something. Overhead, swifts flit through high clerestory windows. A man sits cross-legged in the corner, grinding red ochre into a dish. He's restoring the decorative calligraphy along the Qibla wall, artwork worn away by time and breath. Did you know that archaeologists once unearthed Chinese porcelain buried beneath this mosque's foundations? Whether it was an offering, a weight, or just someone's forgotten lunch plate, no one knows. But it means Chinese goods reached here by the 13th century. Globalization, pre-Netflix edition. You exit the mosque and head toward the palace ruins, though ruins feels unkind. It's more like a sleeping palace, half sunk in soft sand and covered in rebellious green vines. You walk through what was once the audience hall. The stone benches still wait patiently. Maybe they're expecting a sultan who's only running 600 years late. One corridor ends in a stone balcony overlooking the sea. You lean against it. The tide's out, and dhow boats lean lazily on their sides, their sails collapsed like discarded handkerchiefs. A fisherman naps under one hull, a cat curled beside him. Here's your odd but true tidbit. Some Kilwa residents chewed on cloves not just for flavor, but as a form of mosquito repellent. Whether it worked? Well, historians still argue whether the cloves actually helped, or if it was more of a polite, "Excuse me, your breath smells like swamp" gesture. The woman beside you chuckles when you bring this up. You hadn't noticed her at first, but there she is, wrapped in a gauzy red shawl, eyes like storm clouds, chewing thoughtfully on a stalk of sugarcane. She says she was once married to a spice trader who tried to grow cinnamon in their courtyard. It didn't go well. Too salty. Like his manners, she adds. She invites you to dinner. You say yes. That evening, you sit in a courtyard lit by oil lamps shaped like tiny crescent moons. The meal is simple but exquisite. Coconut rice, grilled fish marinated in tamarind, and a chilled melon soup you vow to remember in your next life. Conversation drifts. Someone tells the story of a sunken dhow filled with turquoise tiles. Someone else swears they saw a whale blink. There's a long debate over the best type of banana. You vote plantain. It causes a stir. And through it all, the sea hums. It's easy to forget you're dreaming. But that's the point, isn't it? Eventually, the conversation dwindles into yawns. One by one, your hosts retreat. You remain seated in the courtyard, a thin cotton blanket now draped around your shoulders by someone thoughtful. Above you, stars emerge slowly, like shy performers. The Southern Cross hangs low, and for once, you don't try to name any constellations. You just let them be. Tonight's coin for your memory pouch. Kilwa minted its own currency from gold and copper, one of the few sub-Saharan African civilizations known to do so. Some coins had Arabic inscriptions, others carried the names of rulers long faded from textbooks but etched in metal, nonetheless. You flip a dream coin in your fingers now. It disappears mid-air. Somewhere, a gecko chirps. You lean back, your head against the smooth coral wall, and let the rhythm of distant waves blur the edges of consciousness. Sleep returns, not like a curtain falling, but like a tide creeping in, gentle, insistent, inevitable. Morning, or what passes for it in this ever-drifting haze, glimmers through slatted blinds. You're no longer in Kilwa, but you don't remember moving. The scent has changed, less sea, more soot. More cinnamon bark and iron. You sit up slowly, surrounded by wooden beams and the low murmur of voices outside. A narrow window shows plumes of chimney smoke winding toward a pale, smudged sky. You're in a cramped room above a bakery, 17th century Istanbul, though no one calls it that just yet. It's still Constantinople to some, and officially, it's the heart of the Ottoman Empire. A tray of still warm simit waits on the windowsill, braided with sesame and hope. You tear a piece free, chew, and nod. Acceptable. Not dream-worthy, but decent. Down below, the city wakes. Street sellers holler half-heartedly, their cries softened by the cushion of morning mist. A donkey snorts. A kettle whistles. You descend the staircase, past gossiping neighbors and a boy who's trying, and failing, to balance 6 loaves of bread on his head. The cobbled street is a tangle of smells and colors. Textile shops blink open, unveiling bolts of silk dyed so deep they look like bruises. 2 scholars argue at a corner coffeehouse over poetry, loudly, with sweeping hand gestures and not enough caffeine. You sit at a table shaded by an awning patched with 3 kinds of fabric and order a tiny cup of Turkish coffee. It arrives with a sugar cube and a silence that only thick, tar-like coffee can demand. And here comes your historical moment. By the mid-17th century, Istanbul boasted hundreds of coffeehouses. These weren't just places to sip a hot drink, they were social engines. Sites of news exchange, poetry recitals, debates, even quiet rebellion. Some were so influential that sultans occasionally shut them down for being too chatty. One popular pastime? Shadow puppet theater. Karagaz and Hasavat, one crude, one clever, bantering behind a lit cloth screen, telling stories that towed the line between entertainment and subversion. You don't see them now, but if you listen carefully, a faint argument in that puppet Y falsetto drifts from an alley. Your coffee cools quickly, and with it, your surroundings shift. Now you're inside the Grand Bazaar. It's not the labyrinthine tourist circus of today, but still massive, over 3,000 shops, even then. The ceilings are high and arched, painted with faint remnants of celestial patterns. Merchants eye you with practiced charm. One tries to sell you a dagger shaped like a fish. Another offers a potion for dreamless sleep. You decline both. But a third stall, barely more than a shelf, draws your eye. It's filled with tiny glass bottles, each containing something odd. One holds salt from the Black Sea. Another, dust from a burned manuscript. A third claims to contain the breath of a poet. You don't ask how. The old man behind the table gestures you closer. He doesn't speak, but his eyes twinkle with secrets. He points to a blue vial. You lift it, and the scent inside is unmistakable, roasting chestnuts and lamp oil. He nods. You buy it with a dream coin and tuck it into your pocket. Outside, the air grows heavier. You find yourself in the Topkapi Palace Gardens, wandering among shade-drenched cypresses. Eunuchs pass without acknowledging you, heads bowed under elaborate turbans. Courtiers shuffle by, murmuring about silk shipments and nosebleeds. A servant chases a parrot who's just stolen a grape. You end up beside a reflecting pool, watching koi fish swirl around like confused jewels. The harem is nearby, behind ornate gates, misunderstood by modern minds, often reduced to titillation. But in reality, it's a space of strict etiquette, education, and subtle politics. Women here wield quiet power, navigate court alliances, and compose poetry on rose-scented paper. One such woman sits beside you now. She's older, her gaze distant, her posture impeccable. She sips sherbet from a chilled cup and tells you, without looking your way, that lemon seeds predict a person's fortune if you swallow them properly. You nod like that makes perfect sense. And here's your peculiar tidbit. In some Ottoman harems, it was fashionable to own pet monkeys dressed in tiny robes. They were both amusement and status symbols. Historians still argue whether this was truly common or just exaggerated by European travelers who desperately needed a good dinner party anecdote. Your companion chuckles when you bring this up. She once had a monkey named Iskender, she says, who could mimic the voice of her least favorite aunt. He escaped during a tulip festival and was last seen riding a tortoise through the Sultan's private garden. You don't ask whether she's joking. You just laugh and feel your whole chest soften. By now, the sky has deepened. The call to prayer echoes from a dozen directions, weaving into a single lullaby. The cobblestones beneath your feet feel warm, like they've held onto sunlight just for you. You walk toward the waterfront. Ships bob lazily in the Golden Horn. A boy offers you a skewered fig, caramelized and still steaming. You accept it, savor the chew, then sit on a worn bench watching boats flicker against the current. You remember something now. Maybe not clearly, but with a sense of weight. This place, this time, it has held empires and contradictions and the quiet dramas of ordinary lives. You feel like you've borrowed something precious, and it's almost time to give it back. The air smells faintly of ink and rosewater. You close your eyes, just for a second, and everything fades to gray velvet. You open your eyes to rain, soft and persistent, like a lullaby that refuses to end. Cobblestones shine slick beneath your boots, and the city around you is cloaked in mist. But this isn't Istanbul anymore. It's quieter, colder. Lanterns swing from iron posts. A horse-drawn cart clatters past, the driver wrapped in oilcloth, mumbling to no one. You're in Edo now. 18th century Japan, a city sprawling with wooden houses, narrow alleys, and paper lanterns glowing faintly in the fog. Your umbrella creaks open, lacquered bamboo ribs arching like a bat's wings. Somewhere nearby, someone is grilling eel, and the scent curls toward you like a promise. You wander along the Sumida River, past shuttered tea shops and sleeping dogs. The bridge ahead looms from the mist, its surface polished by centuries of feet. On the other side, a man sweeps the street with a bundle of twigs. He hums a tune that probably predates the shogun. A merchant calls out softly from behind a Norin curtain. You duck inside, and suddenly the world is all wood and warmth. Shelves are lined with jars of pickled things, plums, lotus root, fermented radish so intense it could raise the dead. You sample a bit. You regret it. You sample another. Better. Here comes your historical fact. Edo was one of the largest cities in the world at the time. Nearly 1 million people crammed into wooden buildings and living in orderly chaos. Fire was such a frequent danger that entire neighborhoods practiced coordinated fire drills, and firefighters, hikesher, became local heroes, complete with flashy uniforms and bravado that would make modern action stars look modest. And here's your fringe fact. Some Edo citizens believed that hanging dried sardines over a doorway could ward off evil spirits. Skeptical? Sure. But you also don't want to test it. You leave the shop with a small cloth-wrapped parcel. Inside is a peculiar snack, fermented soybeans rolled in powdered kelp, stuffed into a hollowed plum pit. It's supposed to bring dreams of flying foxes. You're not entirely sure what you're signing up for. The street narrows. A kabuki theater looms ahead, painted banners flutter, announcing the day's performance. You slip into the back row just as the curtain rises. On stage, a samurai delivers a monologue to a crying ghost, while a live shamisen player plucks dramatic stings nearby. No one questions your presence. In this dreamlike space, you're simply another pair of watching eyes. The act ends with a slow bow. The audience, mostly men in layers of muted kimono, exhales in unison. You leave before the applause. Outside, the rain has let up. The air tastes of wood smoke and steamed buns. A rickshaw driver nods toward you. You climb in, and he pulls you through a street market still awake despite the hour. Women sell roasted chestnuts and sugar-coated yams. Children chase each other with lanterns shaped like fish. Someone plays a bamboo flute, the notes so high and fragile you worry they'll shatter. Your driver stops before a bathhouse. Inside, it's all pale tile and echoing droplets. You shed your dream wear and step into the water. It's nearly too hot. Nearly. Steam fogs your vision. A man beside you recites a poem in a whisper, something about a crane and a lost sandal. You nod politely and try not to fall asleep mid-soak. You fail. When you emerge, your fingers are prunes and your soul is soup. A robe waits, perfectly your size. So does a tray of sweets, sweet bean cakes shaped like pine cones, and a cup of roasted barley tea that smells like childhood and smoke. You sit under a paper lantern and let the world slow. You've walked through salt air bazaars and perfumed palaces, sampled snacks wrapped in seaweed and rumors, met women who trained hawks and men who danced with puppets. You've learned things no test will ever ask for. You've listened to shadows. You've eaten history, bite by bite. Historians still argue whether the Edo era's quiet pleasures, its slow food, measured rituals, and moon-watching parties, were a golden age of peace or merely a gilded cage. The truth, as always, probably lives in both. You sip your tea. A cat curls beside you. The world narrows to steam, fur, and a slowly swinging lantern. And here, at last, is your soft landing. The lantern sways gently above you, casting long, sleepy shadows across the wooden floor. The tea has gone lukewarm in your hand, but you don't mind. Everything about this moment asks nothing of you. No questions, no urgency, just stillness, as deep and quiet as a lake at dawn. Outside, the rain begins again, lighter now, like fingers brushing silk. Somewhere far away, a boat horn hums. A dog lets out one lazy bark, then thinks better of it. The world has exhaled. Your body feels heavy now, but not tired, just settled. Like a book finally closed. You've moved through markets and festivals, wandered along candlelit docks and moonlit courtyards, stepped into histories so strange they feel like fiction, and yet, some part of them has always been waiting for you. Let the memories blur now. Let the images soften at the edges, the taste of fig jam on warm bread, the shimmer of glass under gaslight, the soft tap of a puppet's wooden foot. Let them fade like footprints in sand. You are safe here, wrapped in the hush of the past, in a place where nothing rushes and nothing chases. Just gentle stories that wait patiently for you to return. Close your eyes. Let your breath match the rhythm of distant waves, or is that just your heartbeat? Drift now, quietly, like a paper boat down a long, slow river.